Man sentenced to death in Ogun State for stealing a laptop computer, an iPad, and an iPhone 6. Not in my backyard. Akwa Ibom lawmakers say no to federal government's proposal to build a nuclear power plant in their state. On the international scene, Pope Francis rules against ordaining married men in Amazon. And in sports, FIFA to launch fund to protect players' salaries.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. We start this evening with a stunning story that has had many asking whether the crime fits the punishment. Ogun State High Court in Abeokuta on Tuesday has sentenced a man to death by hanging for armed robbery. The accused, Olumide Adekombi, had earlier pleaded not guilty to a 2-count charge of conspiracy and armed robbery brought against him. Adekombi, along with others who are still at large, was said to have stolen one laptop computer, one iPad, and an iPhone 6 during a robbery operation at Saraki Adigbe area of Abeokuta in 2016. The stolen items were said to have been recovered from him later. A victim, Abowaba Salman, told the court that while Adekombi was trying to escape, he had hit him on the head with what he described as an offensive weapon. In his judgment, Justice Rotimi Balogun said the prosecutor had proved his case beyond a reasonable doubt and that the convict would never deny that he robbed the victims. Justice Balogun found Adekombi guilty and sentenced him to death by hanging. Death by hanging for stealing laptop and iPhone. Wow. Akwa Ibom state lawmakers have told the federal government on Tuesday, not in my backyard, as they rejected plans to build a nuclear power plant in a 2 local government area. The lawmakers said they don't want any nuclear power plant in any part of their state. The member representing Itu State constituency, Kofre Abasi Edidem, said the project does not conform to international standards guiding the implementation of civil nuclear programs around the world. Edidem said the International Atomic Energy Agency had warned that Nigeria does not possess the technical competence to handle nuclear issues. He also said the proposal was turned down by the 6th Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. The lawmaker said despite this, the federal government still went ahead with plans to locate the nuclear plant in his local government area. He said the people of Akwa Ibom State could be harmed by exposure to constant emission of radioactive radiations, discharged of non-biodegradable radioactive waste, and absorption into ecosystem and food chain if the nuclear power plants were built there. Minister of Health Dr. Osage Ehanire has announced on Tuesday in Kano that the federal government has set up 3 laboratories at strategic points in the country to diagnose cases of coronavirus. Ehanire made this announcement at the start of the Kano 2020 Primary Healthcare Summit. The minister said nobody had been diagnosed of coronavirus in Nigeria. He said results from those so far tested for the virus had come out negative. Meanwhile, the National Center for Disease Control said in its latest report on Tuesday that 19 persons have died of Lassa fever in the country, with 318 suspected cases reported in 19 states. The report said that 318 suspected Lassa fever cases were reported from 56 council areas in 19 states. Edo State, Ebonyi, and Enugu states have the largest number of cases. The federal government has done so much in the last few years to encourage agriculture and ensure self-sufficiency in domestic food production. It has even put in place strong measures to increase rice production, the country's main staple food. The country's land borders have since closed since August to curb smuggling of foreign rice and benefit local farmers. But many of those farmers now say they are struggling to meet increasing demand and that the price of rice has increased. Reporter Ifiok Etang tells us more from Jos.
Much of the work on this rice mill is done by hand or by foot. 47-year-old Joshua Binko moves his legs through his rice harvest to help it dry faster. Since the closing of the country's borders 6 months ago, he's seen profits go up.
This closing border help a farmer a lot because there is no any foreign rice will come out again from outside that will come to Nigeria.
Small-scale farmers like Binka account for about 80% of locally produced rice in Nigeria. He says it's difficult to meet increased demand without better access to modern farm machinery, irrigation, and fertilizers. And the need for improved technology goes all the way from the field to the finished product.
We don't have a convenient environment to work in, and we lack basic needs like water and electricity.
According to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, Nigeria is a leading consumer and one of the largest producers of rice in Africa. But Nigeria's ban on imported rice has led to an increase in the price of domestically produced rice. Kindergarten nanny Tabitha Amos says she struggles to buy enough rice to feed her 4 boys.
The way the rice is costly now, we are not enjoying it because our salary before, that is how the salary is now, nothing has increased.
A 50-kilogram bag of Nigerian rice cost around $38, 50% more than it cost before the border closure in August. Rice is one of the most consumed staples amongst Nigerians. Experts say in the past decade, consumption has increased by 4.7%, almost 4 times global consumption growth. And the plan to close the borders to imported rice is part of a plan to grow the Nigerian economy.
In the long run, we may be the sole or greatest exporters of rice in Africa. But till then, there are a lot of sacrifices we have started making and we are still going to make.
And for farmers like Joshua Binko, the government asks for patience. It's planning to subsidize equipment for small farmers so they can boost the rice yield and help Nigeria feed itself.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has heaped encomiums on Kenya's late former president Daniel Arap Moi, describing him as one of Africa's foremost leaders, especially in decolonization of the continent. Professor Osinbajo was speaking at Moi's funeral in Nairobi on Tuesday. The vice president recognized the former president for his pioneering work in regional cooperation and his efforts in the resuscitation of the East African community in collaboration with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni and others in the region. Osinbajo mentioned some of Moi's other efforts to bring about the common market for Eastern and Southern African and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. He said these were the forebears of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to which almost every African country has subscribed today. He said this will define the future of trade and relations in Africa. Presidents Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Yoweri Museveni of Uganda also eulogized the deceased former president who ruled Kenya from 1978 to 2002. He died 9 days ago at 95.
Coming up, African stories. Sudan says former President Omar al-Bashir should appear before the International Criminal Court. And later, international news. Pope Francis rules against ordaining married men in Amazon.
Today, night on reach for me to settle blessing. Blessing for you. When this girl first got this my shop called network. Now so on top of NTF 4G phone. Now this girl put it press. I provoke. I paranoid short in reach what time, eh? The ambulance make her tell her to make she mash her hat. Come up from my shop. And later I come realize say this girl go snap am. Put her for inside internet. They take her the 2 adverts. Now I make customers that they come with my shop. Blessing, I want make you help me manage my shop now.
My name but I think Nami and Blessing start work the same time.
Now you and Blessing start work the same time. Blessing, you better start on the T-shirt for top of your 4G MTN phone.
Business makes sense on top super fast and reliable MTN 4G. Join MTN, make you enjoy double data.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the African continent, Sudan's government and rebel groups in Darfur have agreed on Tuesday that all those wanted by the International Criminal Court should appear before the tribunal, a list that includes ousted President Omar al-Bashir. Former President Bashir is wanted by the ICC for alleged war crimes, genocide and crimes against humanity in Darfur. He has been jailed in Khartoum since he was stopped after mass protests last year. Information Minister Faisal Saleh did not specifically name him when announcing the move, but said the decision applied to all 5 Sudanese suspects wanted by the ICC over Darfur. Bashir is one of the 5. Government and rebel groups reached an agreement during a meeting in South Sudan's capital, Juba, that included the appearance of those who face arrest warrant before the International Criminal Court. Bashir's lawyer had said the former president refused to have any dealings with the ICC because he believes it is a political court. Bashir has said the allegations made by the ICC, the world's first permanent court for prosecuting war crimes, are part of a Western conspiracy. He faces 5 counts of crimes against humanity for murder, forcible transfer, extermination, torture, and rape, 2 counts of war crimes for attacks against civilians, and 3 counts of genocide. No South African Airways domestic, regional, and international flights will take off on Friday and Saturday from any South African airport. Flights from international destinations will also return to the country. All this was a result of the airline's death. Angela Coppola reports.
The airline has cancelled several flights since mid-January. At the beginning of February, it announced that retrenchments were now unavoidable.
The difficulty is that when you've got an ailing airline with challenges in terms of meeting some of the short-term targets, with huge pressure in terms of debt repayments, tough decisions have to be made. The consequences of that is obviously that SAA will not need all of the staff that they currently have because they have less routes and obviously less need for different staff in this environment.
Some 100 flights will be cancelled by the end of February. One labour union with members at SAA wasn't surprised by the move to cut routes so drastically.
We expected a radical restructuring, and stopping loss-making routes is one of the things that was an option on the table. We're not that necessarily fussed about the announcement of the routes that are being stopped. What we are quite angry about, however, is announcing retrenchments without actually announcing your business rescue plan, which means we're basically retrenching as a knee-jerk reaction to cash flow, and that's not the way you're going to save this airline. You're not going to retrench yourself into profit.
Analysts see this as the first step in a strategy to save the airline, but they want more details.
We've got to find a way where we can support the airline, but at the same time provide a way in which the airline can provide certainty to the market and also perhaps put a proper plan in place in terms of the long-term sustainability of the airline.
All the stakeholders involved in the airline want it to survive.
We, from the very start, said an airline like SAA can be saved, but I don't think we were under any illusions that the SAA that emerges from this process would look vastly different than the one we had before. You could not continue with business as usual. That ended up with a 6 billion rand net loss every single year.
While solutions are being sought, criticism has been levelled at the business rescue practitioners for the way they have dealt with the unions.
Our worry is, in order to enact a turnaround here, you will need all stakeholders to be completely bought in and on board. And sidestepping labour like this means that you're basically setting yourself up for failure.
While the business rescue practitioners negotiate that path between what's happening on the politics and what's happening in terms of unions, they seem to have the best interests of the airline at heart. We'll have to see if they get it right, though.
Somalia has expressed solidarity with China as it battles the novel coronavirus. The government says it is confident of China's victory in the fight against the deadly virus. Abdulaziz Bilo reports from Mogadishu.
China's ambassador to Somalia, Xinjiang, says his country has initiated several mechanisms to counter the spread of the novel coronavirus. The top Chinese diplomat to Somalia made the comments at a press briefing held in the country's capital, Mogadishu, that was attended by local and international media.
A nationwide mechanism has been put in place, and decisive measures have been taken to contain and mitigate epidemic in the science-based, coordinated and targeted manner. We have confidence, capacity and determination to defeat the epidemic.
Hundreds of Somali students, mainly on Chinese government scholarship, reside in Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus. China says it continues to provide relevant support, including a hotline number to foreign embassies and international students, a move highly welcomed by the Somali government.
We commend China for supporting them on these challenging times. They're all well, none of them has been infected with the virus. Of course, they have the general concerns of being in a quarantine area, has its own challenges, but otherwise their health is well. And they're most of them are qualified doctors who are doing their specialization, half of them, and the other half are mainly students. So they, as much as we know so far, and we communicate with them daily, they're all doing well, and they're all mainly supporting China to combat this this challenge that we face today.
The coronavirus spreading through China and beyond has not yet been confirmed in Africa. Health workers and many African governments say they are not ready to cope with the outbreak. They, however, praise China for containing the spread of the virus. Somalia has expressed solidarity with China as it battles the novel coronavirus. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says that it remains confident China will overcome this epidemic.
Our message to China is stay strong. They will prevail. They have the right leadership and the competence to come against this. And I think it's a test, and I'm sure China will succeed. Somalia stands solidarity with China because China stood with Somalia for a very long time. And during our civil war and all the challenges Somalia faced, Somalia embassy to China has never closed. So China's brotherly support to Somalia is great, and today we stand here to show solidarity with them.
Trade between China and Somalia hasn't been affected yet. The country relies mostly on imports from China. And as it struggles to create a vaccine for the virus, the message from Somalia is clear. Stay strong, China. You will overcome this epidemic.
When we return, international news. Pope Francis rules against ordaining married men in Amazon. And later, sport. FIFA to launch funds to protect players' salaries.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to international events. As Chinese people return to work, scientists are increasingly concerned about the effects of back-to-work activities on the spread of the novel coronavirus. One respiratory expert says data show that new cases are emerging slower and people returning to work would not create another peak.
When will the outbreak peak? This has been a pressing question as the battle against the coronavirus epidemic carries on. SARS expert Zhong Nanshan has been at the helm of the Chinese team investigating the outbreak.
The development of the epidemic shows that new cases are emerging slower than before. Based on our model in the southern part of China, the outbreak could peak anytime from mid-February to the end of the month. A period of plateau is also possible. And with regards to back-to-work activities, will this lead to another higher peak? I don't think it will.
However, despite the optimism, Zhong does not disregard the challenges.
We've been experiencing some difficulty treating those in critical condition. As far as we know, the 2019 novel coronavirus is not exactly the same as the one that causes SARS. We've been testing several types of drugs. Our priorities are first, to be able to kill the virus itself, and second, to alleviate symptoms. We are still facing great challenges, but the fatality rate of this new coronavirus is comparatively lower than that of SARS and of MERS.
Officials have reported central China's Hubei province with the highest number of fatalities amid the outbreak, and expectedly so, being ground zero of the epidemic. Zhong has been leading a high-level expert group to tackle the problem there.
Now, our most important work in Wuhan city is to prevent human-to-human transmission and stop the spread of the virus. More than 10,000 medical workers are coming to Wuhan to help, and the shortage of medical supplies is being relieved. With the completion of Huoshinshan and Leishinshan Hospital and several other hospitals, we are now able to treat patients at different stages in isolation.
Zhong says the turning point highly depends on prevention and control efforts across China. He says he expects to see a slowdown after the holiday season.
A team of medical experts from the World Health Organization has arrived in China to meet with local officials on the coronavirus outbreak. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus says the team will work with China to combat the disease.
Now, a team of medical experts from the World Health Organization has arrived in China to liaise with local officials on the virus outbreak. And WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said he hoped they would soon be joined by more team members ranging between 10 and 15.
The advanced team is already there, and they will prepare everything for the rest of the team. And we hope the rest of the team will join them as soon as possible. And the team could range between 10 and 15. But we're aiming for 10 actually to make it as manageable as possible. So they will have a plan. They will organize a plan based on the discussion with their counterparts. We have fully empowered them. We don't want to tell them to do this or that. And that's what we told the advanced team, because these are experienced people and they know what to do.
The WHO's Executive Director, Dr. Michael Ryan, said the mission's purpose was to understand the nature of the virus outbreak as an investigation to learn and support China.
This mission brings together the best of Chinese science, Chinese public health, with the best of the world's science and public health. And we need to let those experts interact. We need to give them the space, the time to interact, to share information, to check the hypotheses of what's been happening, where this is going. So, in China. So we both learn more about the virus, to learn more about the investigations that have been carried out by Chinese scientists and epidemiologists, to understand the nature of the public health response, which reaches right from the lowest level in the community, right the way through the system to the top. So there are huge lessons to be learned from that experience.
Nissan Motor Company, Japan's second largest automaker, has filed a civil lawsuit against former chairman Carlos Ghosn, seeking $91 million in damages over his alleged financial misconduct and fraudulent activities. Ghosn had been facing criminal charges in Japan for understating his annual salary and misusing company funds. Ghosn, who led Nissan for 2 decades, fled to Lebanon in December while on bail. He said he was worried his ordeal may never end and that he would not get a fair hearing in Japan. Pope Francis has ruled against ordaining married men in the Amazon region as a means of addressing shortage of Catholic priests there. Bishops backed the measure last year and were awaiting the Pope's approval. The Catholic Church in the Amazon region has estimated that at least 85% of villages in the Amazon are unable to celebrate Mass each week because of a shortage of priests. Some are said to only see a priest once a year. Catholic priests are required to abide by the rule of celibacy upon ordination, except in cases where married Anglican ministers have converted. The Pope said in a statement there was a need for ministers who can understand Amazonian sensibilities and cultures from within. A synod of 184 bishops met at the Vatican in October last year to discuss the future of the church in the Amazon. They discussed the possibility of older married men being allowed to become priests. But the conservative wing of the church, particularly in Europe and North America, has spoken out against the idea, arguing that it could lead to the global abolition of celibacy.
Up next, sport. World governing body FIFA to launch fund to protect players' salaries. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. As the only Nigerian player seeded among a 32-man list, Olajide Omotayo is leading the country's contingent to the International Table Tennis Federation Challenge Plus Portugal Open, which serves off today, Wednesday. But Abiodun, Ismaila Akindiya and Taiwo Mati are also on the contingent. On Thursday, Ganiat Aruna and Edem Elfyoung will compete in the women's singles from the first round. Following the late withdrawal of Aruna Quadri, Egypt's Omar Ashar has been upgraded to #1 in the seeding list, on which there are 3 African players. World Football Governing Body FIFA and FIPRO, the world's players' union, have reached an agreement to establish the FIFA Fund for football players and a monitoring committee. This fund is to provide financial support to players who have not been paid and have no chance of duly receiving the wages agreed with their clubs. FIFA said it has set aside $16 million for the fund until 2022. This mechanism takes effect in July. That is CNN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.